Let me go to the assignments. And so Wednesday, yesterday, prep day, read over this stuff. You see, you'll see Amazon rainforest, right, versus the Midwest. Instructions. We have an example, an Excel example of how to use Excel to do the math. We got quadrat starting points, which we'll explain in the report, and your name will pop up will show. Here's your left. Now let's go down to our Thursday stuff. So let's discuss biodiversity. This is the view you have of your handout. So you'll want to read back over it. We're not going to read word for word, of course, for you. Just point out to you. They talk about the importance of species diversity. It's related to species heterogeneity. That means the greater the heterogeneity, just like heterogeneous in genetics, the more variety of species there are. Now, are they evenly spread among all the species? That's the concept of richness and evenness. So those are your definitions, and then they give you an explanation. The example is community said to have a high species diversity if many equally or nearly equally abundant species are present. On the other hand, if a community is composed of a few species, or if only a few species are abundant, then species diversity is low. And then they give you a math example. And then high species diversity indicates a highly complex community as it goes down the third paragraph. So there's your background. Make sure that you read it. And of course, quiz questions, eventually for this material, will be coming from that text information. All right, so there's your background on species diversity, very important. And we use the word biodiversity. It's more in the legal language now. So write that word biodiversity in your notes. Biodiversity. And make sure you read through this particular lab report. Lab instruction manual 5B. Let me flip to the next page to show you the math. You've got some solved problems. You're going to be using Simpson's Diversity Index. And we have already solved, so you can check your math on your work, on the page 2. We're going to scroll down to page 2, and you see table 5B1, various diversity indices computed for hypothetical situations. So this would be a community A. What were the numbers of plants for different species? Columns of species, no, that means you have species 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 10 different species. The abundance, of course, for community A, individuals per species. You can see over column B, community, you had amount of species 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we go to community C, they had a huge number in species 1. 1 in for all of those other species. That D, for the 10 species out there in that field, they had 100 of each. So now the question is, and then E was another example where you only had species 20. So those are the count. You're going to be making your own count. So this is just like you had done a quadrat 10 times, made 10 different counts for each community. So each column essentially is a quadrat, as it is on your data sheet that you'll see. So now, let me go down below here and show you. You're going to be using the little letter D. So that's this one right here. Third row. So write that in your notes. Lowercase of x. The one above is called Simpson diversity. We're taking a it's a little different version of Simpson, where they make little d, lowercase d. And those are the solid values they got for those 5 example quadrats, those 5 sample quadrats above. And so that's what they got. So that way you can stick their numbers. You might want to go with column E, which is only 5 values, and work out the math. See if you come out with 5.21. Now, where are they doing the calculating? Where are they doing the calculate? All right, we go to the 3rd page, and there you'll see the equation. Book here. So there's the equation right here. So write in your notes equation 7. That's the one for lowercase d sub, which you'll be using, and it has it on your handout sheet. So there's the equation for doing that. There's the equation for doing that. All right, and so there's the information from your lab manual. Make sure you read through it and do the math, follow step by step. But my handout it will go over. We'll show you a little more of a hands-on detail of how to solve this math. That's what you're working towards. Is they call it Simpson diversity, which is, as they say there, the inverted version of Simpson's dominance. So we're going to have this lowercase d sub s species diversity is the inverse of Simpson dominance, so we still call it Simpson's diversity, and we make sure we identify it by that letter. Okay. Now, let's go back to that. Okay, now, so you see you have a lot to study from your lab manual. Does anybody have any questions, though, sort of what we pointed out for important points to be studying those first 3 pages? Just sort of which items we said to work with. Got a lot of extra equations. Don't do anything but the ones I told you. Equation 7 is the final one on page 3 that you'll be working with. We show you how to do it on your handout, and you'll learn that in just a few minutes. All right, any questions on those? Questions on that? Very good. Okay. All right, so that's your lab manual stuff. Let's get off of that one. Go back to the take notes, which we just did. But we now will go in detailed hands-on. We got a video that shows you, as it says there, a video will show you how to make your little sampling quadrat with paper and scissors. I'll show you how to use it. We'll be studying aerial views, simulated aerial views of the Amazon rainforest and a Midwestern prairie. Simulated views, Amazon rainforest and Midwestern prairie. I'll show you those, how to do that.
I can take my clothes out of the
okay.
washing machine.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any questions? Now, we have a couple of videos that show you these communities. We're going to show you those right now. And we want you to just watch a little clip of them. You'll watch them on your own because it's just background information about the real world plant community that you'll be working with. So let's stop the assignment around. Here you have it right here. All right. So let me make sure that it's showing up for you. Oh, yeah, there it is. All right. So as you can see, the final report will be due, turned into Blackboard assessments, and you'll be uploading it to the proper instructions that you'll have for that day. Right, and they have it go through safe assignment. So make sure that you do not quote anything without giving a citation, because that's plagiarism, and the university has a big judicial system for that. So it's described on here. So enough of that for now. Let's go through the instructions. let's go through the instructions. Okay, we have handouts you've had over the last several weeks, which will help you because you got to do statistics, exercise 1B, and a little bit about habitat and communities. That's 2A. 2B was what about weather aspects with humidity and precipitation. What might those have to do? And then 3A, which is sampling method, quadrat sampling. You could put 3B down there. Anyway, let's just help you to get a little bit of the technical terms you can include in your report. All right. Study background. We already mentioned many factors, and the factors could be light availability, amount of moisture, anything along those lines. So do your research to for the prairie, which is drier, the rainforest, of course, which is wetter. So that's what we have in this next item. Research library. Good resources, plenty of information. Now, here's the deal. You'll be counting species abundance per quadrat. Now, when we did it in the lab room for Davis Hall, we had a 0.1 square meter. Here's going to be a square inch because you're doing it on a computer screen. So make that little note. We're going to make a video available, but make that little note in your notebook. Yours will be a 1 inch square, not a tenth of a meter, and take up half your computer screen. Okay. And so, of course, one is the Amazon rainforest, we said, and the other is the Midwestern prairie, temperate grassland, different kind of vegetation. So there's a little bit of background for those communities for you. But that's just a bare tip of the iceberg information. You got to go into the library, to really get the technical stuff for your project. Okay, so there's what you got to do to prepare. And we're going to go now to the individual sampling steps, show you how to do that. Pretty easy. Go back to the lab report instruction. You're going to be putting data we're going to show you how to count in a moment with quadrat, and it will go into these proper number columns. This is just a raw data table. This doesn't go in your final report. It's to give you a place to put number to then do the math that you see down below. Right? And the definitions of how to do that math continue on the next page, which is page 2. You have another a working table. This is not a report table. This is how you're going to put your species diversity index for each quadrat, the rainforest, and each quadrat for the you calculated, so that you'll have it there, because then you got to use those 3 numbers for item 3. Conduct a non-paired student test, which you already learned how to do. And then comes the report. And we're not going to overload our brains with going through all the report stuff. You can read that for next week. This week we're mainly going next week. All this report stuff and how to use the library. There it is for you. Now, to go along with what we're going to have you do for the hands-on next, you need to know the color codes for different species are here at the bottom of the second page. And as you can see, talking about biodiversity, the Amazon has got a total of 8 different species you might encounter. For efficiency, we've numbered them like the book did, 1, 2, 3 through 8. They'll be different colors when you go with your overflight of the aerial view of the community. Midwest has these numbers and these colors. So there are your color codes. So where do we use that? We use it back here on page 1. And so we gave a little instruction, use number codes, but we found it helpful to also use the color. Let me show you what I mean. Let me bring up another. Let me bring up another copy of your page where I wrote some numbers in so you can see what I mean. Okay, so you can see students have found, yeah, number 1 through 8, Dr. Williams is helpful, but I can't keep flipping back to know the color. So they've written an abbreviation of the colors beside the number. So let's say in the quadrat 1, let's say that for the quadrat 1, you had counted different species. You got started off and you found white, and you counted there were 3 white. You go on and do it with whatever other colors you see, which would be a different species. So if we went and we counted in that same quadrat 2 orange, you put a 2 right there. You put 2 right here. Maybe with the green. Well, maybe you didn't have any green, maybe the red. Put a 0 if you don't have anything. With the red, we had 7 red. And you counted, you found 2 yellow. And then for the blue, you might have found 9 in that same quadrat. For violet, you only had 1. And maybe there were a whole lot of pinks, maybe 11. So you record all the numbers, then you do your next quadrat, and then you're working with the math. You put a total beneath each row, and yeah, we should see next page here. Yeah, we needed to bring these columns down so that you do a separate total for each column. All right, and I will make that correction for your handout and repost that so that you'll have the columns. Total is it will be the total will be for each separate.
Can you repeat where to put it?
Okay, let's do better than that. Let's go through a practice run, and then we can. I can repeat where to put it, and then we'll show you again on practice run. Okay, so you have your quadrat over the plant community, and within that quadrat square for your first run, which would be your first quadrat, like it's Q1, you see that you have 2 orange plants in the screen, so you write 2 right there. Okay? Did that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, so now we got to go and see, well, how do we count those numbers? Because this is the big step for today. Then the math the math you'll work on for next week, and your calculations will do that. All right, so let's go back to our sheet. Let's start next for activity for today. All right, let me go to correct one. So we're right here at this step here. To go to your habitat, and you have a starting location. It'll be determined using a randomized transect method with randomized starting point. You don't really have to worry about the transect. You're going to have 3 coordinates, and that's in yellow. Your starting grid coordinates are listed for each quadrat in the Excel file attached on your Blackboard assignment page. So it's out there for you. We'll open that for you in just a moment and show you, and we'll have one of you volunteer. We'll choose your quadrats and show you where and how you will place your number. So when we give you the quadrat, when we go to that screen, please write down your 2 values for each of the 3 quadrats. You'll use those for the Amazon quadrat, and then when you go to the different picture, which is the prairie community, you'll use the same 2 numbers for each quadrat corner. That way they'll all be random. Everybody's got different ones, so nobody matches up. Nobody have the same numbers to work with. Everybody's got to be independent. So share out numbers with somebody, they're going to be wrong because everybody got their own quadrats to work with. So I got to keep that in mind. Okay, so let's go to that step. We now got to know, well, what do we do with the grids? What do we do with the quadrats? All right, and where are those numbers? Let me show you what numbers are. We've got to go to a little video that will show you how to do how to make your quadrat sampler and how to do this step 3. Use the color codes and then put your data in that and then do the math. Step 5 will be between today and next week. Make sure that you do it, and you may get to a stumbling point on it. Study it carefully. We'll do a help session next Thursday on how to make sure that you do all of that math correctly. I'll show you where those quadrat grids are. Okay. And you have a 2-digit value, a letter and a number, for the starting grid coordinate for the lower left corner of each quadrat. I got a little video that shows you how to do this. So for instance, let's have a volunteer. Martin wants to. So we go and we find values. So let me go back to the Excel. Okay, so we see that Ms. Barton's first quadrat is F1. I'm going to show you how to do F1. And you'll use that for the first quadrat for the Amazon, and that'll also be the starting corner for your starting quadrat for your prairie. You'll do 3 quadrats in Amazon, 1, 2, 3. You'll do 3 quadrats in prairie, but you'll use the same starting coordinate point. That'll be the point you'll locate your lower left corner of each quadrat, F1. Okay, so write those down so that we can do Miss Martin. So F1, she's got F3 and F5. Okay, so now let's go from there. Adjust your screen display so that these pick as big as you can make it. This is just a of course. You see we have horizontal row 1 through 10. These would be digits in that 2 value code, and then we see the rows are A, B, C, D, E, F. So her first lower left corner was F1. So we'd find row F, come over, and there lines up with the 1. So where I have, well, I got to go to the picture to show you. All right. So we come down to F, and we go over to 1. So at this little point right here, where F and 1 intersect, that'll be the lower left corner of her quadrat, and the video will show you then. So the quadrat is a square. We count everything in there, and then we go to once she's counted it and placed it on the raw data table for each of the different colors she sees. And what we see in there? Well, we see greens, we got whites, there probably some purples and blues. Got to count each one. Then we go to her next grid coordinate was F3. Next grid coordinate was F3. Lower left corner was F2. Your next one you'll see on your Excel file. Your next one may have been C3. So you'll move your quadrat lower left corner to C3, and there we see we got a bunch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We got 12 whites. We got 1, 2, or 5 oranges, and so you make the counts of each color, and we'll then put them in the column for quadrat 2. So we'll just play with white here. The color white, I don't know if we can get it in there, but you'd write 12 for quadrat 2. You do count for each species represented by the color for that quadrat till you get your third. Then you'll get a different, we'll use the same quadrat numbers, but you'll have a different picture, which will be this Midwestern prairie. And you see they don't have as much diversity, obviously, only 5 colors. And you'll do the same counts with your quadrat. And so there we see it right there in those positions. Okay, so that's how we do the quadrat and the entry of the data. So I hope record them on our data. All right, so that's just a basic demonstration. We're going to show you the video in a moment. All right, raise your hand if you had any questions then about how you'll use your letter and number to find the lower left corner quadrat. Raise your hand if you have a question about how to use those. Of course, this is the Amazon. Find your notes, of course, that you'll repeat this and do the exact same thing for the Western Prairie. All right, very good. So now let's, in class, learn how to basically find your starting point for each quadrat. We just did that. We just said you'll count all the individuals and then put them on the table. Okay. You've got to do this for 3 quadrats in each of the habitat types. You've got to do this for 3 quadrats in each of the habitat types. So that means 3 for Amazon, 3 for prairie, and write the numbers in the table immediately below here. Each row of a color, within each separate quadrat. All right. Let's go now to a little video. And so really we've done down here is step 4, record the data. We're going now to go through a practice run as if it were you. We're going to go now through a practice run as if it were you. Bring up here and show you how to do this. So let me stop this